Hello everyone, I'm just going to be showing you a little photography retouch tutorial. We're going to be using Adobe Lightroom and Photoshop later on. Now we begin in Adobe Lightroom, and this is an image of a model I took last year. And to begin with, we're just going to be correcting the light, color, contrast, generally making the picture look a little bit more professional. So first thing I'm going to do is take this dropper here. Now this is the white balance adjustment, and the idea is here, if we click on something that should be neutral in color, then it will tell Lightroom what sort of colors it wants across the whole screen. And probably the best way to demonstrate that is if I actually click on something that's not a neutral color at all. So if I click on this pink of her lips there, you see suddenly we get this very unnatural looking color because it's tried to correct this area here to a neutral tone, which means it's pushed everything into this green that you can see here. Obviously that's not quite right. If we try on this background there, that's much better. Now sometimes if you click on a pure white, you get an interesting effect. That looks a little bit orangey, so I'm going to go back here. And of course, exactly what you see when you do this will depend on your monitor and its calibration. Now, of course, there's no absolute right and wrong with this. Technically, if you want to reproduce the real world sort of colors, then you're best choosing as close as you can to a sort of 50% gray, which on this image I think this here is probably as close as you're going to get to that, or maybe even there. Yeah, that's quite grey looking, isn't it? But of course, for creative purposes, you can click absolutely anything. I mean, if you want to do that, give it a bit of an interesting color kick, there's absolutely no reason why you can't. Let's go up there. Yeah. So I think we're going to stick with a fairly realistic sort of color. I'm quite happy with this. If we wanted to, we could use these sliders here to adjust it again, so we can add a bit of warmth to the image, which is, as you see, gets quite orangey up towards that end, and again towards this end it gets very blue, which in itself is not an unpleasant effect, but it's not really what we're after just now. And again, with this tint slider here, we can add a bit more green into the image. Again, you probably wouldn't go this far under ordinary circumstances. You might just add a little bit of green or a little bit of this kind of magenta into the mix. And again, if you go all the way up there, you come up with something crazy. So I'll tend to leave that at 0. Now you can always click in this box, type in 0. Well, there you are. But I think just to get things back, we'll just click this again, and that's what we've ended up with. Okay, that's fine. Now I'm noticing down here, if we blow this up, this is a little overexposed, which tells me the overall image exposure may be a little on the high side, so we might want to just pull that down a touch. Now doing that, obviously the background has almost completely disappeared. The hair's now far too dark. We can try and bring that up, but what you'll notice is this area still looks a bit too bright. So actually we're just going to leave that at 0 for now. We're not going to do anything with the contrast just at the moment. We'll come back to that in a second. Now here we have slightly finer control. So we have highlights, we have shadows, we have whites, and we have blacks. And essentially you can divide the image into 4 different types of shading, if you like. So the blacks are the very darkest area. These will be blacks around here and here. The shadows obviously are the sort of darker colors. I mean, it's fairly straightforward when you think about it. The highlights will be the lighter colors, probably the cheeks and the forehead, and the whites will very much be what we've got here. Now I can pull the whites down, and you'll see a little more detail coming through here now. So we're not getting that, and the good thing about that is it's not really affecting the rest of the image. We can do the same with the highlights, and you'll see again, just looking down here, you'll see again that a lot more detail comes in there, but that does also start to affect other things, so we don't want to overdo that. Down to there a bit. The shadows, I think we might try just lifting them ever so slightly, and the blacks I'm going to lift again. Let's just see. If we lift the blacks all the way up, you get this interesting sort of blown out low contrast effect. But I think we'll actually leave the blacks maybe on plus 24. So there you go. You see, obviously, just doing exposure would be moving all of these in the same direction to the same degree, and obviously that's gone down 80 and this has gone up to 24. We probably don't need that quite so far down as that, actually. Bring that back to something a little more sensible. Okay, the contrast slider. Now, of course, we can do this now, and that will preserve what we've done down here, but apply overall exposure across the entire image. Not a lot of point in doing that right now, so we're going to set that back to 0, and we're going to push on. So next thing we come to, and it is very much a top to bottom process, this I find, is texture. Now if we raise the texture, what you'll find is that we get this very sort of harsh, gritty kind of appearance. What that's doing is just bringing out fine detail and making it quite contrasty. And if we pull it down the other way, then you start getting this very sort of almost liquidy kind of effect, where things look very sort of smooth. And as this is a kind of fashion beauty shoot, you probably, if you're going to change this at all, you're probably going to drop it down a little bit. The clarity does something very similar. I'm not entirely sure what the distinction is, because texture's only been added relatively recently, and previously this effect was just clarity. So again, you do that and you get this very stark, high contrast look, which is quite cool, but again, it's not necessarily the most flattering way to portray someone. And if you come down here, then you can see it almost looks like paint. It becomes very glassy and very indistinct. You lose a lot of detail that way. So again, if you just drop it a little bit, it tends to just take some of the finer details out of the image. We've still got skin definition. We can still see, you know, that's still realistic looking skin. So it's not like we've completely, if we drop that completely, obviously then it starts to look a bit plasticky, a bit fake. So we don't want to do that. We want to keep as much of that detail as we can, but just soften the overall appearance. Now, dehaze, again, is about bringing out fine detail. If we pull that down, it actually applies a haze to the whole thing, and you can sort of see what that's doing. Now again, there might be you might want that effect for a very specific thing, but you're probably only going to be using this very, very subtly. If we go this way, it's kind of just making everything very dark and murky. So I'm inclined to just leave that close to 0. Let's leave it on 0. Now, vibrance and saturation, again, they do similar things, but in different parts of the color spectrum. So as I understand it, as I like to think of it, saturation is very much about the sort of reds and the kind of skin tones, oranges, those kind of colors. And as we add that, as you can see, it becomes very, very orange. It looks sunbed-tastic there. It looks quite nice on the hair, actually, but yeah, that's not a good look. Sort of Oompa Loompa style there. It's and again, if you pull the saturation down, of course, then you end up with a monochrome image. So I don't really want to play with the saturation too much here. Now, vibrance does a similar thing, but it's more focused on kind of blues and greens. Now again, what you're seeing there is the face again changing colour. There's actually a lot of green that goes into skin. People tend to think, you don't tend to think of your skin as being green, but there is a lot of green in the mix. And again, we take all that out, or even not all of it, because again we get a black and white look. If we take a lot of that out, then you see she looks a lot paler. And this is really just adding those greens and blues back in there. I'm just think the eyes are a little bit dark here, and she does have quite lovely dark eyes. So we'll just raise this shadows and see if that brings out any more detail there. Blacks, that's it. Just that little pop of the eye there, and we'll just check the rest of the image. I think that's fine. We're going to do more fine tuning in Photoshop later on. Now, if we particularly felt there were individual colours that we really wanted to either pop up or bring down, we could use this. The saturation level, it's more selective than this, but it effectively does the same sort of thing, except that this time we can just choose the reds, the orange, the yellow, etc. If, for example, I mean, there doesn't seem to be a lot of blue in here, but if I pump that up, pull it down, no, there really is very little blue in there at all. I can't even see any difference there. Don't know if you can. We'll put it back on 0 just in case. Might be missing something. Let's try orange. We've already seen what happens when we push the saturation up orange wise. That's not a good look for anyone. If we pull it down, now you see what happens here that wouldn't have happened with the saturation is, of course, that the more sort of pinky reddy colours in the lips stay there. Again, that's not something we want to mess with. I think we'll leave all of these for now, because the colour balance of the whole image I quite like. Split toning is not something we're going to be dealing with today. That's kind of almost a special effect thing. Now what we do have here though is detail, and the main use of detail I find, if we go to an area like there, yeah, that's good. So we're just here, we're just next to her eye, and what you can probably see there is quite a lot of little dots. It's quite grainy looking, and if we zoom in on that, you might have a clearer idea of what I'm talking about here. It's just a bit of what we call noise on the image there. And so this is where noise reduction comes into play. And the first noise reduction control we're going to be using is the luminance slider. And as we bring that up, you just see that noise, that little spottiness just starts to disappear. Now if we overdo it, we punk it all the way up as high as we can, then again everything starts looking very painty, which is an effect that you might find it useful, but it's not very realistic. And again, we want to keep the textures in the skin, so we need to keep that on the lower side. It's about striking a balance really between getting rid of this noise. So you just want to slide it up until you see that just sort of fade away. The detail slider then can usually come down a fair bit before it has any seriously detrimental issue. Again, if you take it all the way down, you end up with a very peculiar glossy kind of look. We can take that down a little bit. Now colour does the same thing. Where this is working on those sort of black dots on the white, colour will affect if there's any coloured noise in there. So you sometimes get little red dots, it's often just worth a try to pop it up, see if it does. It doesn't seem to be making much difference now, as far as I can see, so I'm going to leave that quite low. Don't have to worry about lens corrections. I'm not doing any effects. So that's basically what we're going to be doing in Lightroom. And in the next episode, I will take this image into Photoshop itself, and we'll do a little bit more work there. Thanks for watching. Please click like, subscribe, all that kind of thing, and leave comments down below. Bye-bye.